we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heisong, coming to you live from Sneads Ferry, North Carolina. And joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio, we've got Dustin. Dustin, how's it going?
It is beautiful. It was a beautiful day, almost 80. I think it's crazy, the weather in this city. It can go from 50 to 60 to 30, but it was a beautiful day. It was sunny, still sunny. The sun's starting to go down. Allie, you know this, Cleveland, Ohio has beautiful sunsets off the lake. So it's a beautiful place. Come summertime, it's a gorgeous place to be. But Allie, you'll find some humor in this. I went to the NFL draft. We'll get into that, all the fun that I had there, all the festivities. It was 60 degrees. I thought I would not need sunscreen. So literally while I tailgated for several hours, I did not put any sunscreen on. And yes.
Come on, Dustin. Rookie mistake.
No, what? No, more than a rookie, I'm a ginger kid. I should know better. Like, I know I burn easily, right? But I thought it's only 60, but I didn't realize how long I was out. But we'll get into that. We had some great fun. Detroit, it's an interesting city. And I'll talk about my feeling now that that's my fourth NFL draft that I've been to, and what I think they did right and did wrong. And I'll be very transparent about that, because it's interesting to go to four different cities, right, and see how four different cities put them in the draft.
You've got a good grasp on it. So do you know, though, that you can get sunburnt in freezing weather also?
You can go ski. Well, it's
some sunscreen. So just because it was 60 does not mean you're not going to get burnt, Dustin.
Well, here's the funny thing, Allie. I come from the mountains in a state with mountains, right, from Idaho. Well, you would have people that would go skiing at high elevation. It's actually worse for you because you're closer to the sun. When you're higher elevation, it actually has a worse effect on you, even if it's cold outside, because you're closer to the sun. So yeah, it's a real thing, and I was just an idiot. So there's that. So
all right, let's get into it before we kick it off, because I want to get kind of straight into some draft talk before we welcome on Webster Slaughter here to the program. Before we do so, I want to kick it off with our friends over at Stadium Mustard. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition. And by the way, it's loved by millions, so be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. I know some Stadium Mustard made its way around Detroit, Dustin.
Oh, did you see the pictures? I think I got at least 20 different fan bases to take home Stadium Mustard, Tampa, Detroit, Texans fans. So now, I know it's already other than in Ohio, obviously, but I thought it was very cool to, among all these super fans and these fans from other fan clubs, to actually experience what Stadium Mustard is and why it's such a huge tradition at Cleveland Browns games. So they were kind of cool. And it was funny. They're like, I've never tried this. And then they're like oh, this is amazing. I'm like, here you go. Be my guest. So they took it home. And we threw a bunch of shirts at them. So they had a lot of fun. It was interesting to see their reaction to it, because if you think about it, like every city has Pittsburgh is, it's the fries on the hamburgers or whatever. Isn't there like a tradition where they do like this, kind of thing? Cincinnati is the chili, right? Like the chili, so every city kind of has its thing, and ours is the mustard, right? So, and the brats and stuff. So I thought that was very interesting for them to experience something different that, is not tradition to them. So that was cool.
Yeah. Guys, jam-packed show tonight. We're going to have Webster Slaughter on here in just a few moments, talk to him about him and about the draft, his thoughts on the current Browns team. So we'll talk about that with Webster here in just a few moments. Before we get into it, Dustin, you mentioned Detroit. You were at the draft. Let's talk about it. How was it? The good, the bad, the ugly. Let's hear it.
So we'll start with the bad. So okay. I was gallivanting around with a guy named Willie Lawson. You probably know that. Larger than life Willie. We're wandering around, partaking in like what you were telling me about, the cool bars, the casino, all that stuff around Ford Field, like everything that encompasses that area. So this is what I didn't like about the draft. They had like security zones that you went in, then you came out, and then you went into what was called the real green zone, like the super secure area. Well, it's 6 o'clock. It's 2 hours before draft, and I'm under the impression I got plenty of time, right? I'll just go down there about 6 and get in there. I got to the gate at 6:15. I'm literally to the metal gate, Allie. The metal gate where you get to go through. We're closing the event down. No more people in. This is Thursday night. 200 to 285,000. They broke a record attendance. I mean, that's a lot of people in one spot. 287,000 people. So I did not get in Thursday night. Full disclosure, I didn't get in. But I was also like, Browns don't have a pick, right? So it wasn't like I wasn't like torn that I didn't get in. And then Friday, our good friend Kathy, that was fan of the year. She won 2023 fan of the year. We had her on the show. She wanted to partake. She wanted to be in the inner circle, as you call it, down on the floor. So I was like, well, there's this overflow line. Let's go check this out. We're told this is where people can go. If somebody leaves the floor, Allie, we've been on the floor of the NFL, wandering around down there. It's a very secure zone. And if you're in the wrong place, they let you know really quickly you don't belong there. So we got in this line and we get over there and the gentleman goes, I actually need a couple of you. Grabs us, her and I, takes us all the way down to the inner circle among the 15 Browns fans. Friday night, also the night we have picks, right? So I was like, this was so cool to be down in the inner circle among all the fans. I snapped a picture of a Steeler fan sleeping down there. I'm like, this is shameful. I don't know how you can be sleeping with draft picks here on the floor, but it was a lot of fun. We got to be right down there in the center of it all. And it was a lot of fun. I got to tell you, anybody that hosts or has a city that is a fan of another city and that comes to your city, partake in this. It is free. It is fun. It is very family friendly. It's really cool. And then Saturday I stayed for a little while and then I came home. But I will tell you this, Detroit did an amazing job of how they did the draft. My only critique would have been the exits and entry into the main area is very hard because downtown Detroit is a very compact city, right? Lots of streets. And you kind of had weird people. I mean, people were going confused and lost, and it just seemed a little clunky, if that makes sense, kind of the getting people in and out. So that would be my only takeaway was, I don't know if they could have had it somewhere else, because I know they want to support all the bars and restaurants in the economy, but it was just kind of weird. If you can kind of picture, they had it narrowed down there close to Ford Field, but it's kind of weird to get down there, if that makes sense. It was, I also thought this was crazy, Ali. They actually had a Tigers baseball game on that Friday as well, a 1:00 game. So I was like, you have this huge draft with hundreds of thousands of people, and you also throw in a baseball game. I know if it was Cleveland, I don't think they would have had a Guardians game going on during that weekend. I mean, it was just weird to see all that happening. So, but you're right. Ford Field is a cool stadium. That was cool to walk around and to partake in that part of the city. And by the way, that's the first time I've spent a significant amount of time in Detroit as well. So first time I've really taken in that. I know you was there last fall, I think. So, and you went to a game, but it's a big city, and it's interesting how it's laid out. So.
Well, I think that's going to be probably, I would imagine that's a problem for most cities, right? Cities aren't designed to host the NFL draft, right? With an influx of 500,000 people there for the, I mean, let's talk about that for a second. What Detroit did, and like the amount of people that were there. One, I think part of it is it's easier to get in and out of Detroit than just, let's just say, I don't know, parts of like Kansas City, for example. I think it might be a little bit easier to get a cheaper flight into Detroit. So a little easier to get there, but from the TV, from my couch, it looked like that city was just completely full.
Well, here's the other thing I thought about, Allie. And we know this because we went to the draft and it was even kind of like semi-COVID. But Detroit's a very huge city, in the scope of cities in the United States. So if you have a fan base that is excited about their football team and you are a big city like Chicago, Detroit, and it's a free event, people are going to show up, right? I mean, that's the other thing I thought about. Like, this is a free event, and if you live in this city and you're a Detroit fan, you're going to the draft, right? So that was the other thing I thought. These cities, like, I don't think Green Bay, Wisconsin next year is going to break attendance records for the National Football League, right? And I thought there are so many people that live in Detroit. They just all came out. They're like, this is free.
That, and it's also a Delta hub. I mean, you can get a lot of
That's true.
direct flights into Detroit. It's relatively inexpensive. Probably easier than it's going to be to get to Lambeau. It's going to be easier to get to Hell, there's several stadiums
Right.
across the National Football League that are not actually in the city. So it'll be curious to see how that goes over the next couple of years at different cities. But so out of the drafts that you've been to, what was your favorite experience? Just overall experience, like considering, vibe, how the city did, the draft experience itself, just overall best experience. What would be your favorite?
Well, not to be biased, but what Cleveland was, the curveball that Cleveland was thrown and the amount of people that still showed up in a semi-COVID year, I thought was impressive, especially with the weather. It was, as you know, it was just god-awful weather at times.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Most enjoyable, like actual experience-wise, I would say Kansas City. Like Kansas City kind of did it really well. I would say second, probably Vegas, but Kansas City, just from the scenery of, it was on like the World War II memorial, like you had the Coliseum behind it. It was very cool looking, right? Like they did it very different than, the big, like the traditional big thing that goes on the road to all these drafts. Kansas City kind of made it more artistic and more, I don't know. It was a different feel, I guess, is how it looked, because they did it right at the train station, and the backdrop was this super cool white Coliseum. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just had a different look to it. So I'd say Kansas City as far as like the feel and how fun it was, and like the way it looked from like a artistic, like entertainment thing, like the way they presented themselves to the public, I guess. So.
And you're a big, Kansas City fan, right? Like, I won't say of the football team, but like going there, you went to the playoff game, you went to the draft there. Like, you like it.
Well, they got good barbecue. I'm a big fan of the barbecue.
So. I hear you. All right, we're gonna have a quick word from our friends over at Lorello Vineyards, and then right after that, we're gonna bring on our good friend Webster Slaughter to the program. But before we do so, here's a quick word from Lorello.
My name's Kim Lorello, and my husband and I, Larry, started Lorello Vineyards over 21 years ago. We're a small cantina nestled in the Grand River Valley in Geneva, Ohio. Our winery consists of 2 beautiful tasting rooms, and we have 2 rooms that can transform into party rooms inside. Our menu here at Lorello's is home cooking. We have wood-fired Tuscan pizzas, paninis, salads, and several appetizers. We have award-winning wines that have won medals internationally, nationally, and locally. In the summer and springtime, we have a beautiful outdoor patio that also we have live entertainment. We also have entertainment sporadically through the entire year inside during our cool fall and winter months. Additionally, outside in the summer, we have a beautiful tent that can house several guests for a private function. We hope to see you soon, and if you want any more information on Lorello Vineyards, you can go to our website at www.lorellovineyards.com. We hope to see you soon.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and bring him on. We've got Webster Slaughter on the program. Webster, how are you?
We're doing just fine. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for taking the time for us.
Amen.
Hey, Webster, first and foremost, it was a pleasure. Allie and I had a pleasure enjoying the cruise with you, seeing that you still have that competitive spirit, even out of football during a volleyball game, coaching up the guys, making sure that the right team won. First and foremost, tell us a little bit about that. That was the first Browns fan cruise that was created. What was your takeaways? And what was your most, and I think I have an idea what your favorite part of that cruise was, but tell us a little bit what you enjoyed about the cruise.
Well, we also enjoyed having you guys on the cruise too. We had a good time. That volleyball, we had some cheaters out there, but it was all right. We did all right.
We won't say that Josh Cribbs was cheating.
We won't say Josh's name out loud. But no, we had a great time, man. It was a good time for just not only the players, the fans, and everybody involved. I think everybody had a really, really good experience. My most favorite part of the cruise was the dinners that we had a chance to sit with the fans, and they got a chance to ask questions. Just 8 of them and me sitting at the table and just discussing, and a lot of them knew more about my career than I did. So it was a fun experience.
It was a lot of fun, and that was my first cruise, Webster. I don't know if you've been on cruises before, but it took me a while to get adjusted to, get my sea legs, if you will. But once I got there, it was a ton of fun. It was great meeting everybody. But as we know, the draft just happened. So before we get into it, I would love to hear your draft story. Second round pick in '86. Talk to us. Paint the picture. What was that like for you?
Well, I was at a friend's house, and my mom had come down, and a couple other people had come down, and we were waiting. I had been told that by the Dallas Cowboys, if they didn't take Sherrard, they were going to take me in the first round, and that kind of went past. They took Sherrard, and I was just waiting for my name to be called. I ended up falling asleep on the couch. And when I finally got picked, they woke me up. Hey, you're getting picked, and talked to the Browns on the phone afterwards. They called me and we had a good conversation, and told them I was looking forward to coming in and getting to work.
So yeah, paint me through that picture, because we see on television, right? Usually it's the GM, the owner, sometimes maybe the offensive coordinator. Who was the one that made the call, and were you recruited by the Browns? Did you have any idea that the Browns maybe were looking at you? Because obviously you said the Cowboys were definitely interested in you. Did you have any inkling that the Browns were even involved?
Yeah, the Browns sent Paul Warfield down to talk to me. We had some conversations in the office, watching some film and stuff like that. I really didn't know who Paul Warfield was. I knew the name Paul Warfield because he told me, but I didn't know who Paul Warfield was until he left, and then talked to somebody back with the Browns, and they said, that's Paul Warfield, the Hall of Famer. So anyway, there was that, and then they had asked me. One of the persons that was on the phone asked me before they drafted me, said, "Hey, we had you come down to take a trip to Cleveland, and you told us that you missed the plane." And they said, "Did you really miss the plane, or did you not want to come here?" And I said, "No, I truly missed the plane, and I have no problem coming to Cleveland." And that's when they told me they were picking me with their pick. And Art Moselle also was on that line, told me how he was glad to have me and look forward to seeing me.
So when you got the call, I know you said you were sleeping and had to be woken up to be told you were a Cleveland Brown. What was your initial reaction? Were you excited to be a Cleveland Brown, or was it just I can't believe I made it to the league more?
Well, to be truthful, I was just, I figured I was going to get picked somewhere. I didn't know if it was going to be in the second round or in the 9th round, sure. And I was just glad to get into the league. And so I didn't really care, to be honest with you, at that time, where I was going to go. But I'm so glad that I ended up with the Cleveland Browns.
Real quick, we have a question here. We have a question from George. Who was your favorite player to play with? I'm sure that's probably a tough one to answer, but if you had to, George would like to know.
To play with?
Yeah.
Well, the guy that I probably had the most fun with on our own team, was probably Reggie Langhorne. We probably hung out more than anybody else. There was another guy who came along a year or two later, Metcalf, and
yep.
We three used to hang out quite a bit. So I enjoyed, to be honest with you, we would go out in big groups, like most of the team would go out to these places, and we just had a great time. But if I told you the people I held closest to would probably be Langhorne.
As I say, we've had Langhorne and Metcalf both on the show. And, what's interesting, Webster, is we've talked about this with some of the other guys, especially you guys from the 80s into early 90s. It is really a brotherhood that you guys have created. Like, absolutely. You guys have stayed such a tight knit, and you brought so much to the city of Cleveland, faith in the team when the city was struggling, and you brought so much enthusiasm and excitement for the city and the team. It's kind of a unique situation. And what do you think made that 80s team, early 90s team so special because, as you know, the Hanfords, the Felixes, the Reggies all still live here. Kevin has made this not only their home now, right? And they didn't even grow up here. But what do you think has made this brotherhood of all of you guys so special and such a tight-knit group to stay together, still come in, go to alumni things, and be so special with each other?
First of all, we had a great talent there. And then also we were all pretty much young. And then even before I got there, they began to turn over the leaf and started winning some games. And they got into the playoffs the year before I came. When Lindy and Vati came, we changed the whole offense and we went from more running to a little bit more passing. And everybody was just excited because now the Cleveland Browns were relevant. And it was and then when you go out on that field and you listen to those fans and how excited they get about plays being made on the field, it excites you and it gets you ready for the next play.
That time kind of reminds me of this current Browns roster, right? It is just absolutely loaded from top to bottom. You've got top tier talent, you've got depth, you kind of have it all. So I'd like to get your perspective on what it was like to go up against some of the best defensive backs in the league at that time. We're seeing that with our current Browns, right? We've got a great receiving core and we've got a great secondary. I'm of the belief iron sharpens iron, but what was that like actually day in and day out practicing against those guys?
Well, day in and day out was fun because, I'm a competitor and I love competition. And so to have Hanford Dixon, Frank Minifield, Felix Wright, all in the defensive backfield as a rookie, and to go against those guys every day, we had one-on-ones where we go one-on-one against. And then I had a competitive group of receivers over there with Langhorne and Brennan and Gerald McNeil and Clarence Weathers and people like that. So one-on-one time during practice, all eyes were on that side of the field. When we were going at it, when the defensive backs were going at the wide receivers, everybody was watching.
So here's a question. So I don't know if you got a chance to watch much of the draft. What was your take on this year's draft and kind of what, this was kind of a weird draft for the Browns. They didn't really have any huge glaring holes of need, right, where they needed to fill like a starting left tackle or something like that. But I'm just curious, based on where they kind of picked on the players, what was your overall take on this year's NFL draft with the Browns taking the 6 players?
Well, to be honest, I didn't get to see the Browns pick. I was watching the draft on the TV for a little while, but then I had to take off and go somewhere. So I didn't see the Browns pick, and I didn't really look up and see who they had picked up. So I don't have a lot of information to tell you about the Browns. I do believe, the acquisitions they made in the offseason were good acquisitions. Jerry Jeudy, I think, was just underused when he was in Denver. So I'm glad that they got him on board, as I believe that him and Deshaun together are going to make that place pop, of course, with Amari on the other side. And then also Njoku that's come around. Right. We pray that Nick Chubb is back to his old self. And if that's the case, man, I'm looking forward to watching these guys again.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be, I think that we've got one of the best receiving rooms in the league. Now, I was actually just on, I forget what, CBS Sports or something. They were listing like the best receiving trios in the NFL. The Browns weren't on the list. And I think that they got a little snubbed there with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and then, throw in David Njoku to the mix. I think that we've got a really good core here. But Webster, real quick, James has a question. What was one of your favorite moments or favorite times that you had while playing for the Browns?
Well, I had so many, I'm not kidding. I had so many wonderful times of playing on that field in front of those fans. One of the ones that stick out because the Pittsburgh Steelers, in our division rivalry, the one where we won in overtime right there in Cleveland on the lake. That was awesome. My first playoff game against the New York Jets as a rookie, or 30-something seconds left in the game, I catch a pass at the, 2 or 3 yard line to send us into overtime and eventually win the game. There was a game against Cincinnati where I caught a couple touchdown passes, but the Monday night game, where we had the record 97-yard toss from Kosar. So it was so many memories on that field. The playoff games, there was some good and some bad with that, but we just enjoyed each other. When I say each other, I'm talking about not just the players, but that fans base that we had. All of us seemed like we were one, and that made it fun for me.
So here's an interesting question for you, Webster, and you can take the middle road on this question. So I give you a free pass on this. But today in Cleveland, you may or may not know, but a certain stadium rendering was leaked to the general public of possibly a new dome stadium in Cleveland. You've probably heard about Brook Park and possibly the Dome Stadium. Kind of people are kind of, I think some times have changed. People are looking forward to a dome and all the economic things that it can do in a city. You live in a warm climate, right? You get to live down in the South where you don't have to worry about those terrible Cleveland winters anymore.
Right.
What is your take on that? Because, obviously they could keep it down at down at the lake, renovate it, or the brand new facility that can have multiple events year round out in Brook Park. What is your take on that? Because I know there's both sides of the story there.
I'm pulled both ways on that one because, I did when I left here, I came and played with Houston. They had the dome and stuff like that. It was real comfortable to play inside with tennis shoes on your feet, and stuff like that. It felt good. But man, there was something special about playing on that dirt. And I call it dirt because that's exactly what it was most of the field. Monday nights, they used to paint it green to make it look like grass. But man, we had so much fun out there. I don't know if we should take that away from Cleveland. That's kind of an advantage that we have when other teams come in to play the Browns. They got to deal with these weather elements and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. I'm torn on that one.
Yeah, because it is
comfortable for the player, but I think it's more exciting for me when I'm outside in the cold and braving it, and the fans are braving it, and some of them taking the shirts off and chewing, dog bones and stuff like that. It's fun like that, man.
Yeah, it is true. It is, because you're right. It is tradition versus economics and all that, and there's all kinds of different ramifications that go into a new stadium, and we know this because the team left, right? So we know there's all these pros and cons to building a new stadium.
I can tell you, I had a great time here in Houston playing in the dome, and I stay in Houston now. We're in Missouri City, Texas, but I didn't have half as fun as I did when I was in Cleveland. I mean, it was just a different vibe. It was a different excitement. You can feel it. And so that was the difference, I guess.
Actually, that was going to be my next question to you is, you've played for a few different teams and, you went on this Browns fan cruise, what Browns fans are all about. I guess my question is, having played for several different teams, what makes Cleveland different?
I can't even put it in words. I played on 5 different teams. Kansas City has a great fan base. Houston Oilers, the House of Pain, they had a good fan base, but they just don't compare. I mean, for me, I don't know if it's because it's the first team I went to. It's the environment that is made on Sundays with these fans getting excited as they do. The players that we had, it was just exciting. So much more than any of those other places I've been to.
So, a lot of people, know about your great playing career and what you did here in Cleveland and all those great playoff teams. Obviously, there's life after football, right, Webster? And I know that you're now an ordained minister and stuff like that. So kind of like paint that picture, and a lot of athletes, I always say NFL not for long, right? You're not in the NFL that long, right?
Absolutely.
And you actually have a real life and family and kids. But tell us about your life after football, how that's been and how the Lord's blessed you and what you do now.
Well, immediately after football, I was involved in all of my kids' careers. They were all athletes themselves. All of them went to school. All four of them went to school on track scholarships. So we did all of that. Of course, as a father, I was the coach on my son's baseball team. I was his coach on his basketball team. So we've done all of those things. And then once they begin to leave the house, I had to decide, what am I going to do? And I was already doing things at senior living facilities. And one time, one of the persons that was supposed to lead the Bible study was not there, and they asked me to do it. And I did it, and I've been doing it ever since. Not only that place, but several other places, doing these Bible studies. And it's been a pleasure for me to share with these seniors, to encourage them. A lot of them feel like at this time of life, why are we still here? Why are we still around? Or does God still have purpose for us? And so for me to be able to ensure them that he does, we wake up in the morning because the Lord sustains us. And so to share that with them and see them be encouraged about it, it encourages my heart as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say, just to second that question, I've worked with some of these organizations in the past. Have you ever done anything with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes or any of those organizations like that?
Absolutely. Years and years ago, I did something with Fellowships of Christian Athletes. Did a couple conferences, or I was at a couple conferences. Matter of fact, it was one of their conferences where I started walking with the Lord. So yeah, I did some work with them way back when. In fact, they used to come to my house way back when and do a Bible study there and bring their musicians and everybody there, and we'd have a nice Bible study in the house. Yeah.
I keep thinking when we were just going back to the cruise, Dustin, at our table, we had the couple that got married on the ship. And
Wow.
Webster, I know you were part of that. It's just really cool to hear, one, their excitement and their perspective on it, but also to be able to talk to you and, just how things come full circle. So it's really cool to have that energy and be able to talk to you today. But Dustin, anything else before we let him go?
No, I'm just going to say, Webster, it's a blessing to have you on the show. I know the Cleveland fans were excited to listen to you tonight and hear all of your stories and stuff like that. And we'll love to have you on at some other time. But we just appreciate you giving us the time tonight. And go Browns.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I had a great time. I appreciate it. Next time we'll go on there, maybe we can get the video going. I know I didn't get on it. Next time I'll visit you guys, Lord's willing. We'll be able to do that.
I love it.
Thanks, Webster. We appreciate it. Go Browns.
All right, y'all take care. Go Browns.
That is Browns legend, Webster Slaughter. Man, his energy is awesome. It was so great to be able to talk to him, and just life during football, awesome. Life after football, awesome. Just what a guy.
I gotta tell you, talking to Hanford, because I told Hanford he was coming on the show tonight, and he goes, "Let me tell you, when I was already established with the Browns, here came this kid named Webster Slaughter, and we knew he was good." And he goes, "Man, the first practice, he was like, ooh, we got something here." Like that, and for Hanford to say that, right? To know that the Browns really had a player, and Webster Slaughter's career is a highlight reel, right? Like, all the different plays he made. And, we always talk about athletes, right? We talk about the Patrick Mahomes and these guys that when the moment is big, they go to that level, right? And he just said that in that interview. With just a few seconds left, I catch the ball at the 2-yard line, take us into overtime against the Jets to win that playoff game, right? That's a guy that you call the clutch player that rises above in a situation like that. And in LA, the best way for me to describe it is, the city in the 80s and the early 90s for the Browns, the economy was horrible. Cleveland didn't have a lot to look up to, I guess would be the best way. And this Browns team really, really brought this home, right? Really kind of give the city hope. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Gave this city hope and something to be excited about, and kind of distract them from the real reality of the world. And the Browns, as he said, I played other places, but I felt it. It meant something different. And you talked to some of the other players. Literally, it was dirt because the Cleveland Indians played there as well, and they spray painted dirt green to make it a field. And other players that I've talked to that are former players said they absolutely despise and hated coming to Cleveland because they're like, the conditions were terrible. But the players here are like, we love it, right? Like, come on, bring it. Like, we're used to this. We practice here, right? So it was interesting to get, players that have actually played here saying they hated it. And to Webster's point, he says, I loved it, right? This is great. So,
yeah. Something that we're excited for is we've got a new sponsor, Teresa's Pizza. Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about Teresa's?
Yeah, so Teresa's Pizza, guys, if you've never had it, check it out. They've been around the Cleveland area since 1969. That's right, 1969. Check them out at Mayfield Heights and also University Heights. Great pizza, great fun. If you're a college student, you get a discount if you go into the University Heights location. But just awesome pizza. Go check it out.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. All right, let's get back to the draft. So we talked about the good, the bad, the ugly, about the draft itself. Being there in Detroit, Dustin,
Yep.
Watching it from home. Obviously, I had a good experience. I was on the couch. But let's talk about the actual draft. So quarterbacks off the board. There they went.
Six.
Six. I said 5 in the first round. I was wrong. 6.
Ridiculous.
And you know what? I actually thought the show we did right before the draft, I said on here, I was like, yeah, I know I said 5. Like, okay, maybe that's crazy. It was 6. So before we get into all of that, let's just talk about the first round. What were the biggest surprises to you? Before we even talk about winners and losers of the draft, like any draft shocks, because I can think of quite a few.
The biggest one for me was a team not making a move for a quarterback, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like kind of a blockbuster deal trade, like, we're going to give you this quarterback because we want this quarterback, right? I was like, there was rumors about Minnesota doing some things possibly. And I guess for me, that was the biggest one, that there wasn't a day one kind of super trade, if that makes sense. Like that was probably my biggest thing that I was looking for and thinking the shoe was going to drop and this team was going to move in there above this team and take this guy. And that was
just
probably
to a certain extent, like it did kind of happen. I think my biggest shock, and like I still just simply cannot, and I don't think that I will ever get over it, was the fact that the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr. number 8 overall. That was honestly, I think the word that I have for that in the moment was I was flabbergasted. I just I didn't see that coming. And then to hear that they also tried to trade back up to number 10 was just insane. So I think when we start talking about winners and losers of the draft, like you have to consider Atlanta in there. Like, I don't know what that was. Especially there was several really good defensive players there available.
Well, and you think how much the Falcons paid Cousins, right? Like,
right, yeah, like it's crazy. Now, I also see the other side to it. Having a very solid backup quarterback, having a really good starter in Kirk Cousins, and having a really good backup quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. I agree with that. That's not what I'm flabbergasted about. No, what I'm flabbergasted about is that they took him at number 8 overall. We talked to David about this, right? Like he has battled through some serious injuries, and that, like, do you take him? Do you not in the first round? I don't know. I mean, talent wise, you can't dispute it, but like that early, I was pretty surprised to see that. I wasn't surprised to see JJ go to Minnesota. Bo Nix, wasn't surprised there. Were you surprised at all by the receiver situation?
Well, they seemed like they were going pretty quick, you know what I mean? And I guess for me, sitting there kind of watching the draft, I was like, it made me wonder if the Browns were going to have a decent opportunity, because they were starting to go off the board. I will tell you what was interesting, and that kind of was eye-opening for me, and I might have the number wrong here, but I think they went 14 or 15 picks without a defensive player in the draft.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I was like, there's talent. Yeah.
The first defensive player was number 15.
Yeah. I mean, to me that was probably the biggest. I mean, other than like a blockbuster trade, but because there's really good talent on defense, and if you're one of those teams in the top 15 and there wasn't an offensive player that you were even looking at, you're like, hello, you know what I mean? Like, let's go. Like I've got the pick of the litter here of all these defensive players. That was to me, I was like, we're the defensive guys. Like, I mean, I know that some of these teams don't need a quarterback. You know what I mean? I was just
My dad just texts me and says, my grandma said flabbergasted back in 1942. Thanks, Troy. That's funny. That's funny. Just getting back to the draft here. Were you surprised that the Chargers went offensive tackle with Joe Alt? I wouldn't say that was a shock by any stretch of the imagination, but like I thought maybe they'd go receiver. They lose Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They go with offensive tackle. I don't know. I thought overall it was obviously quarterback heavy, but what was good for the Browns, pushed a lot of talent down to us. We'll get into that here in just a second. Who do you think, now that we know where these quarterbacks went, I just want to keep this strictly to quarterbacks here. Now that we know where they went, who do you think, because I think that there's going to be several starters week one. I mean, Caleb Williams, starter week one. Jaden Daniels, starter week one. Drake May, probably a starter week one. Michael Penix Jr., I don't know. JJ, yes. Bo Nix, yes. I mean, like a lot of these are going to be starters. Who do you think is going to be probably the most successful just after the first year as a starter? I mean, given the best situation, where they went, where they got drafted, what are your thoughts? Who kind of went to the best situation here?
I think JJ. If I'm looking at just the wide receiver room, all the stuff that he has around him, he goes into a position where he can kind of be successful out of the gate, because we talk about this all the time. You can draft a quarterback, but if he has nobody to throw to, you know what I mean? Like if he has no talent around him, he has to improvise a lot, right? He has to extend plays and stuff like that. So I think Minnesota, I don't know. I feel like that's a good situation. Is that division tough? Yes, but I mean, this might sound crazy, but if he plays well, Minnesota could be a wild card team. I mean, I don't know if that's crazy to think, but I don't think the NFC scares. I mean, there's a few good teams in the NFC, but you could be fighting for that 6-7 spot. I don't know. Like it's just
crazy. Yeah, I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's possible. I mean, the NFC, yeah. George says he doesn't see any of them being the next Manning. I agree with that. I think that
we talked about this, at length.
This week where just because it's historically a good quarterback draft doesn't mean like they're going to be historically good quarterbacks. It's just the volume more or less going in the first round. So let's get to our picks. Yeah, go ahead.
As I say, with that, I mean, there are a lot of good quarterbacks. There's not a lot of great quarterbacks, right? Like Peyton Manning's a great, right? So this is a draft of a lot of good quarterbacks. But in my opinion, to your point, Allie, there's no great ones in there, right? So I mean, that's kind of
yet to be seen. Right. I think I like Jaden Daniels to the Commanders. I think that's a good fit. I don't know. I'm worried for Drake May just because like the situation in New England's really, really tough. I don't know how he'll succeed. Caleb Williams goes to a good situation currently. We'll see what the Bears do with it. But yeah, I mean, JJ's got Justin Jefferson. I mean, there. Before we get into our picks, Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about the Barley House?
Yeah, guys, if you haven't been to the Barley House, you have to go there and try it during the week or during the weekends. Sit long, talk much, laugh often. It's a great place to go on a Friday, Saturday night, or during football season for the Browns when they do their big tailgate down there. But yeah, guys, check it out, Barley House. If you're in town, it's patio season here in Cleveland, right? The weather's nice. Go down there to the patio down there on West 6 at the Barley House and enjoy a nice cocktail out there on the patio on one of these wonderful evenings in Cleveland. It's May, so enjoy the weather while you're here in Cleveland.
All right, let's get into it. With their second round pick at number 54 overall, the Cleveland Browns select Michael Hall Jr., the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. I think a lot of us were really big on Mike Hall. One, because several of us that either are watching the show or doing the show are Ohio State fans, or we've watched a lot of Ohio State football. You know who this player is. He's disruptive, kind of a raw talent. Like, he's going to be a rotational player. He's not going to probably get the start right away, but Cleveland guy, hometown kid, going to be able to get some really good reps here. So I think this is more of a depth selection as it currently stands, but I can certainly see him getting more reps as the season goes on. But this is a pretty old defensive line. Obviously, we've got Myles Garrett, but I mean, Darius Smith. The list goes on. There's a little bit of age here on the defensive line. So getting youth here, I really like the pick. What was your thoughts?
I like the pick too. And again, like you said, as all those offensive players went in the first round, that just compacted and just brought more of those defensive players available into day two, right? I mean, they just did. And I think the Browns got a lot of value at this pick. And I also saw this as someone that could be a starter sooner than later and could contribute to the Browns. And it was a solid pick. Out of all the ones, this is one of the ones where I thought was a very solid, kind of almost you can't miss pick, but one of those that's probably going to turn out okay, right? Like you knew what you were getting with him. You knew what he did at Ohio State. A lot of tape on him. So I liked this pick a lot.
And what do we know about Andrew Berry? They like young players, big-time production, and a big-time program. He's still 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until next month.
Crazy.
Until next month. And during his career at Ohio State, 45 tackles, 10 TFLs, and 6 sacks. So, I mean, a true interior defensive lineman. He can get after the quarterback. He can absorb the run. I really like the selection. He was my number one defensive tackle at that selection. Next up, I didn't see it coming. I thought that they might go offensive line, but not with this player. I did not think that they would go Zach Zinter out of Michigan. Now, oddly enough, I'm sure a lot of people watching this show know that he broke his leg. That is something we'll talk about next week with David on the podcast. He was not able to join us tonight. So we'll talk about that next week. But oddly enough, guess who broke his leg? Mike Hall Jr. Now they're teammates. So, crazy how that played out. But one thing to know about him is he allowed 1 sack and had 1 blown run block in 2023. So he did not commit a single penalty also last year at Michigan. So the kid's a monster. He really is. He had 42 starts in college. I think that this is a really good depth signing. He's not going to be a starter right away, but as we know, last year, what happened to that offensive line? Totally decimated. You have to have depth there. And I think getting Zach here at 85, I think it was a really good value pick. Now, I think you probably could have gotten somebody that could contribute earlier at this selection because obviously we know he's coming off of injury and he's not going to probably start over Wyatt or he's not going to start over Joel. We know that. But as a depth player, I really like this selection.
Well, and what I like about this, what I think I also like about this pick is he was a team captain, a leader on that football team. People rallied around him, right? He was a big guy in the locker room. I think that speaks volumes to this locker room that we learned last year is a pretty tight unit, right? These guys are pretty close. It's a pretty tight unit of this current locker room, and the culture is very good. I think he brings those leadership skills that you want. Instead of being a distraction, he'll be a great addition in that locker room. So that's what I liked about this, just from his leadership standpoint and what he can bring to the team. And I really liked that part of it.
So from the number 85 pick, they did not select again until number 156 in the 5th round. So they went from the 3rd round to the 5th round, 4th round selections. And with that pick, they went Jamari Thrash, the receiver out of Louisville. Guys, I love this pick. I really do. I think that he's going to be a great complement to this already really, really good receiving corps. One thing to know about him is he did transfer from Georgia State to Louisville, so he only played one season there in Louisville. He had 858 receiving yards, and he led the team, and that was 4th most in the ACC, and he was 2nd team All-ACC. Prior to that at Georgia State, he was 1st team All-Sun Belt in 2022. Look, I think that this adds some really good depth. At some speed. I think that he's a development type of guy. He's not going to be able to start right away, but you don't need him to. Being able to be in that room, which is an absolutely loaded room, is going to be nothing but good for this kid. Again, I like it. I'm very high on these 3 picks. Once we get out of here, I'm a little shaky on some of these, but these 3 picks I thought were chef's kiss.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about this. With a name like Thrash, you have to succeed, right? If you have a name like Thrash, you better be great in the NFL. What I liked about this pick, Alex, specifically, you brought up a good point. He doesn't need to start right away. He doesn't need to go into that room and fight for a starting job. What I like about a pick like this is we talked about on previous shows, Stefanski's talked about this, and so has Andrew Berry, with a kicking game and what's changing in the National Football League on kickoff, and the way they're going to line up, this is a great guy for that, right? That you can put back there and can be a burner for you and possibly be a game changer, not as a starter, but on special teams. So I could see him having a potential role on special teams and being maybe that kind of speed that can get through that first line of the kickoff team and maybe break one for the Browns. So that's what I'm looking forward to with this pick.
Yeah. All right. And then next up, 6th round, number 206, they went with Nathaniel Watson, the linebacker out of Mississippi State. Really good off-ball linebacker. And I like, actually, I said the first 3, and then I get a little shaky. I include this one with, a really good selection here. He's a 3-year starter at Mississippi State. And by the way, he's the 3-year starter, is the only player in the FBS with at least 300 tackles and 20 sacks since the start of 2021. So big-time production, big-time program. He led the SEC with 134 tackles and tied the conference lead with 10 sacks as an off-ball linebacker. Man, that's pretty darn good. He's got good size. I think he's going to be an early contributor. I'm not going to say that Nathaniel Watson is going to be a starter because I don't think that he will be. They signed Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush, in addition to obviously having like JOK.
Yep.
Got some guys in that room. So I do not think that Nathaniel Watson is going to be a day 1 starter, but I do think that he will be an early contributor. Your thoughts on this pick?
I like this pick. And Allie, we talked about one of the areas of need for this NFL draft for the Browns was linebacker. I think this brings the only more glaring hole that I thought we needed depth in the room for linebacker. This puts me at ease a little bit more with that rotation of linebackers in the room now with this pick.
Yep. Okay, next up on the list, 227 Miles Harden, the corner out of South Dakota. Look, guys, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched a ton of South Dakota football because I haven't.
What?
I know. But I do think selection of corner here. We didn't even get to talk about the Browns do pick up the 5th-year option on Greg Newsome.
Yep.
So adding to a very strong room there, Denzel Ward, Warren Emerson Jr., Greg Newsome, Cam Mitchell also to that. Something to know about Harden. He's 2023 third team all FCS All-American, 2-time all MVFC selection, and he's had 6 career interceptions, 5 forced fumbles. So good depth. I think, time will tell with this player, right? Obviously 7th round picks, we'll see kind of thing. But I will have to do a little bit more homework on him to know exactly, and stay tuned next week for that. And then, do you have any thoughts there before I turn it over?
No, like I said, I don't have the South Dakota whatever division they play in network, so I didn't watch a lot of South Dakota football, even though I'm from the West. North Dakota State, some of those schools get a little more attention than even South Dakota does. Again, depth, right? We can't say. I mean, you've said it ad nauseum. I have. You can't have enough corners in the room, right? That's one position where having corners. Special teams, wherever these guys may fall or make the roster. He's going to be fighting for a play or fighting for a roster spot, at the end of the day when it comes with this football team. And we'll see what that comes out of come training camp. Sure.
And same with this next selection. 7th rounder, 243 overall, Jawan Briggs, the defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. Again, depth, right? And he'll have a good opportunity to showcase his talent. But I think it could potentially be an uphill battle to make this roster because it's a stacked defensive line. Like that's just the reality of the situation, and that's a good problem to have. So, I can't say that I've watched a ton of Cincinnati football to know this player like the back of my hand, but I think that he's going to have a good opportunity. And, come training camp, look, a lot of really good role models in that room, right? I mean, Webster just talked about how iron sharpens iron. I think we'll see a lot of that, especially with these young guys as we get, into OTAs, training camp, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, again, this will be one of those we don't know if he's going to make the team or not, right? And quite honestly, I always look at these 7th round picks along with the undrafted free agents that the Browns signed. They kind of all fall into that because some of these people could have not been drafted and picked any team in, free agency undrafted. It could be, it's kind of interesting where these guys could fall. I don't know. It's a crapshoot. We talked about it last year, DeAnthony Bell is an undrafted, free agent and makes the team just because, he ended up, rising to the top among all those other players. So.
And same with Ronnie Hickman. I mean, I will say this, Andrew Berry, this front office, they do a really good job of identifying undrafted free agent talent and having at least one player a year be a contributor in a big way. I mean, 2 years with Anthony Bell, past year Rodney Hickman, Tanner McAllister got some play time. So like, it's a thing that exists. And I just saw a comment on here. I just want to read real quick. I think I just highlighted it from James. Tom Brady and Purdy both came out of the 7th round, so maybe we get the Tom Brady of defensive backs in the 7th. You never know. You never know. Let's hope.
Let me ask you this, Allie. There was a lot made of, now that we went through these picks, I want to get your take on Javion Cohen of Miami. A lot of people thought he was somebody that could have been actually drafted. And he fell out of the draft completely because of some, off the field issues. But he was one of those players at one time that was going to be a very good player. I'm just curious. The Browns obviously took a chance on him, but a lot of people think he's going to make the roster. I mean, there's a lot of buzz around him. And I was just curious what your thoughts are on him. But at one time he was very high. You know what I mean? And
Dane Brugler has him in the Beast as a 5th or 6th round pick. Obviously, that was not the case because of some off-field things. But what Dane says here is overall Cohen is a physical square cut blocker who can lock up targets when he stays centered, but he has trouble combating quick defenders on his edges. He protects as a backup. Or projects as a backup, with potential to be more. So yeah, I do agree with that. There's a lot of potential here. I don't know a ton about the player. Right.
But big time program, right? Again,
yes, it falls under the same guidelines, the same categories, the same everything that Andrew Berry, the guardrails really that Andrew Berry, this front office like to employ while they're evaluating talent. Yeah. Most definitely. Before we wrap up, Dustin, let's talk about the Hartville Flea Market. I know you're down there quite often. I grew up going there. They've got a ton going on. They've got the outdoor flea market. I think this is over a 12-acre lot. It's just everything you can imagine. It's open to Fridays and Saturdays year-round. They've got antiques. They've got produce. They've got something for all ages, fun for all. Over 12 acres of outdoor vendor space. The Hartville Flea Market features a wide variety of vendor booths, from produce to antiques to comic books. You'll find it all. And you got to stop inside. They've got some goodies, some food. That's where that magic store used to be. I used to go there all the time. It's a pretty cool place.
Well, and Allie, anybody that does outdoor selling, they're now selling their outdoor flea market spaces. So if anybody does any kind of those trade shows or does any outdoor type of sales of items, you can sign up now for a flea market booth for the summer. And I know you spent quite a bit of time there as a child. In your childhood, I had never really discovered it till maybe 8 months ago. But it's massive. It's a massive campus. It's got the hardware store, by the way, which is the largest independently owned hardware store in America. Let me say that again, America. I mean, the thing's got 3 floors. Ollie, that place has houses inside of it. I can't even make this up. There's actually full-size homes inside the hardware store that you can go and say, I like this sink, I like that kitchen countertop. But I was blown away. There's houses inside of the actual store. That blew my mind. But and then they have the kitchen. But yeah, we've done a lot of Brown signings down there. Rick Flair is going to be down there next month. Njoku is going to be down there as well, I think early August. So but real quick, Allie, I have something to tell our listeners. I didn't even cue you for this. But we are going to be able to be a part of David Njoku's celebrity softball game in Cleveland on June 8th. Super exciting. All the Browns players are going to be there. It's going to be at Lake City Captains Stadium. But guys, you can get a discount on your tickets. This is here we go, Brownies discount. We will drop this and do a separate post. But if you type in Pro Bowl 85 with a capital P, you get a significant discount on your softball tickets for the celebrity softball game June 8th. But it was really cool. Go in there, order your tickets, but that's Pro Bowl 85, but use the capital P, hit the little lock on there, and you will get that discount. It's a pretty steep discount, by the way. This is going to be really cool, Allie. I don't know if you saw who's all going to be there. It's Amari Cooper. It's a lot of them. Josh Gordon is coming back in town. There's a couple females. I don't know them, but they're huge influencers on Instagram in the sports space, have millions of followers on Instagram and stuff like that. So they're bringing a lot of former people in. It's going to be interesting, but it's going to be crazy. But it's the David Njoku. And you know how big this thing always is, right? It always draws a ton of people. And by the way, it's going to help 20 separate children's fundraisers here in the greater Cleveland area with all the money going to them, which is super cool that these kids are going to be able to go out there, sell tickets as well, and give back to their organizations. I thought that was super cool.
Really cool. Really cool. Yeah, that'll be a good time. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up on a beautiful Wednesday evening?
Allie, I'm glad to be back in Cleveland. It was a fun time up at the draft, guys. There's a lot more stuff we'll be doing this summer. So buckle up. We'll be bringing you a lot more different stuff. David will be back next week with the medical moment to talk about how some of these players that had injuries in college, how that translates into their careers in the NFL. And Allie, more to come. Also, maybe a very, very special guest next week. If we have it, we'll announce it. But there's your teaser. We may have a big-time guest next week. So just buckle up and get ready.
All right, stay tuned. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, Browns fans,